Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
And Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Hey.
Hi.
Before we get into today's normal person episode, reminder, we have a new Clarity on Fire community that just started last week. We already have a really great group of people in there introducing themselves.
Can vouch for that. I also know almost all of them, like because I worked with them. So I know that they're cool.
Awesome people already. So if you want to join our new community, we have a Patreon page, and there's 2 tiers that you can sign up for. The Flame, which is $6 a month, and you get a whole community. But you guys, where you get the community, the social piece of it. You get a monthly call with other people in the community. This coming one, the first one, we're kicking off in March, is a book club style. So if you love the idea of doing a book club with other Clarity on Fire people, I mean, seriously, like I know some of you, that's like your dream.
I mean,
you need to join.
A sad dream, isn't it?
I don't
Like,
think
dream
so.
Bigger, but also come to the to the community.
You can have many dreams. This can be one of many.
This
dreams.
is an attainable dream, and I like attainable dreams because unattainable dreams are hard.
It's a very attainable dream. It already exists. The date is set. It costs you $6.
You just have to join.
That's it.
That's all.
And you will also get quarterly
Rachel
meetups
Zooms
with Rachel.
and occasional bonus content.
And
Or
some bonus
if you're
content.
an antisocial person who doesn't care about the community, I feel you. I see you.
I see you, introverts.
I acknowledge you. There are introverts in our community. Let's not.
That's true. That's
and
true.
you and I are introverts. But there's a $3 tier where you can just have occasional bonus content if that's all you want.
Yeah. And that's kind of like you saying, I like you, I want more of you, and thank you for making a podcast that I love.
And all
Here's
these other
$3
people
a month.
can go jump in a lake. I don't care about
and
them.
that's fine. We respect that too.
That's fine. So, important thing. Today is the last day not to join. You can join anytime you want. But today's the last day to join and get entered into a little raffle to win a free coaching session. We're going to give away 2. One with me, one with Kristen. So this is a good reminder. Good deadline.
Today, Friday, the 12th.
Yeah.
In case you're listening later. In which case, still join. You just won't be in the raffle for a free coaching session. But you still get all the perks.
Okay. Link in show notes, or you can just go to clarityonfire.com. Look at the community tab. I would actually just recommend going straight to Patreon. Patreon.com/clarityonfire.
Yeah. And if you're interested in kicking off this month, the 2 books that you get to choose from for the book club are Untamed and The Midnight Library. So you can read both if you want to, but you only have to pick one. And you don't even have to read it. You still can join, but there's going to be
the theme. A breakout session in the Zoom on each book. So you just have to pick which breakout session you want to be a part of. And as I'm seeing people introduce themselves and post, people seem to be picking, it's not like one book is winning. People are interested in both.
Pretty even split so far.
It's going to be a good group no matter which one you choose. If you join, there is a post that I tell everyone to introduce themselves. So go leave a comment on that. And you can see that people have been leaving comments and
comments on comments. And
yeah, I might have to create a new post or something. I don't know. It's nice. I'm glad we're doing this. And I'm glad that we're pulling all these people who I've known and liked for years together. And now they can know and like each other. That was the goal.
That was the goal. It's finally happening after years.
Okay. So there's that.
Okay.
Last day to get a free session if you enter. Well, chance to win.
Chance to win.
No promises.
Yeah. And today we're doing a new normal person interview.
And this is a little bit of an oddity as far as normal person interviews go. Because like 99% of our normal people we know and have coached or have worked with us in some capacity.
Right. This is my first conversation with Emily Florence. Although a client did connect me to her and I gave her a shout out at the beginning of the interview. And we clicked right away and we had a lot in common and we, she had a really great story to tell about her own career journey that I think is going to be a good permission slip for some of you who are worried about going quote unquote off track in your career and who are worried that you've had an unconventional career path. I think Emily's story is going to be like, oh, okay, so that's actually fine. And maybe even in some ways preferable. Do you want to read her bio?
Yeah. All right. Emily Florence is the founder of Savvy Miss, which is honored to be named a Forbes Top 100 website for women. She's also the host of the Everyday Happy Show podcast, a certified life purpose and business coach, a writer, and a former entertainment publicist and journalist. Emily is a puppy mama to a silly lab named Harper, a lover of green tea, a travel enthusiast, and a grateful optimist.
We like that she also has a lab.
My lab is not silly, though. She's like intense, and if a dog can be snarky, then she's snarky.
I feel like Scarlett's become our Clarity on Fire mascot because she's been here since the beginning days.
She'll probably make an appearance on a future Rachel Zoom if you're interested. She has a Master's of Arts in Broadcast Journalism from Emerson College in Boston, a BA in Cultural Anthropology from the University of California at Santa Barbara, and a life coaching certificate from the Life Purpose Institute. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur, she was an entertainment publicist representing award-winning clients, including American Idol, Gilmore Girls, So You Think You Can Dance, Malcolm in the Middle, Bernie Mac, and more. Emily loves inspiring and supporting people to create happier, more fulfilled, easygoing lives and to be kinder to the amazing person staring back at them in the mirror. So obviously, Emily when you read her bio, it's like, well, that's an expert. Why isn't she an expert interview? But I think it's because you're not really talking to her from her perspective as an expert. You're talking to her about her life.
Exactly. And I was really torn which one to use her for, because I know that she has so much to share from her own expertise as well. But really the story that she told here is like her version of just her normal career path that led ultimately to her expertise. But that's not really what we got into today. So who knows? Maybe we'll have her back on as an expert later. But today, she's here in the capacity of a normal person, but you can still go check her out if you're interested in her work as well.
Okay, enjoy, and we will be back at the end.
Hi, Emily.
Hi, Kristen.
I first of all want to give a shout out to my client, Sarah, who connected us. She was like, I just feel like you guys are going to have a lot of synergy and have a great conversation. And even though you and I just met, like, 5 minutes before we hit record, I can already tell she's right. So I'm really excited to talk to you today because I think you have a story to tell, that a little bit of a winding story that a lot of people are going to resonate with. I also have a feeling you're going to end up giving a lot of people permission to not take a traditional and linear path in their career. I mean, really life in general, but particularly career in this instance. And that's something that a lot of our people I know need to hear. So let's jump in. I know your career has taken several twists and turns over the years. And I want you to tell the whole story here in a second. But I want to actually start a little further back, if you're down with that.
Yeah.
So I saw on your website that when you were 20 years old, you took time off from college and traveled around Europe for 4 months completely by yourself.
Yep.
So that's already a pretty unconventional start. I'm curious, can you just tell us a little bit about that experience? Because that's one that most people just go to their 4 years or 5 or 6 years of college or whatever uninterrupted. And even if they do go on a summer trip or something, it's usually with friends or as a study abroad. So tell us a little bit about that choice.
Totally. Okay. First of all, yes, Kristen, thank you so much for having me on the show. As I said before, I love what you guys are doing, not just for entrepreneurs, or fellow entrepreneurs, but also for anyone, you guys who are listening right now, who you're just, maybe something's calling you and you're in a, regular 9-to-5 grind, or you just kind of haven't, been able to take the leap yet. But I just love what you guys are doing. So thank you for having me on the show. Okay. So yes, it was my junior year of college, and I was on the quarter system. And so in all honesty, this came out of having my heart broken. So I was in a really long-term relationship, and I was cheated on, and my heart was completely broken. And I just was having a hard time finding myself on my own, which is super normal if you've been in a relationship for a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just kind of, once I started going through the healing process and all of that, I realized in trying to start dating somebody new that, I still had some issues and I needed to work on me. And so my last name is Florence, and I felt like I had to get out. Also, there was just something inside of me. And so I looked at the map and I was like, oh, Florence, Italy. What better place to find myself than a city with my
You're
own name?
I obviously belong there, so I need to go explore.
And I felt called. And I think you and I talk about this in business and in life. And I'm sure we'll dive a little deeper into this today as well. But there was something inside of me that just felt like, go. And so I met with my school. I was doing my undergraduate at University of California at Santa Barbara. And so I met with an advisor and I said, hey, I still want to graduate in 4 years, but I need to take this time off. Can I get any credit? And they're like, yeah, no. And I was like, okay, well, I just needed to do it for myself. So I took a quarter off and I cashed in my stocks and I used my parents' airline miles and I booked a trip to Florence, Italy. And I enrolled myself in a language school where I was placed in a flat with 7 other people, but I was the only American. It was kind of remember the show, The Real World? I don't even know. Maybe it's still on. But it was like that, but I was the only American. And it was just an experience that blew my mind. It was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was not only did I learn so much about myself and also other people and other cultures, which was so inspiring. And then I traveled by myself and I met people and I realized how many incredible people there are all over the world to meet. And it was just an incredible experience. And yes, when I did return back to the United States, my heart was healed and I really felt like I had found myself also, or reconnected with myself.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just imagining the courage that took. And I know in a way sometimes, because I remember being 20 with a broken heart, and it is one of the more intense experiences you can have. So at that point, just anything that's going to bring me back to myself, I'm here for that. But I have to imagine that trying something that took so much courage and helped you understand yourself in this whole new way, because it was just you didn't know anybody. You really had to figure it out and stand within yourself to get through that. I mean, by the end, I'm sure you had all kind of great relationships, but at the beginning, you're like, what am I doing? So
and I was taking trains where I was I didn't speak the languages. And I remember being in Rome once and I was just learning Italian, but for some reason my cab driver didn't speak English, but we both spoke a little bit of Spanish and French. It was just hilarious.
Right? I mean, talk about proving your own self-reliance to yourself pretty early on, I would say. Yeah. And it's kind of teasing what we're going to get into in a minute, I'm sure. But I wonder how that decision to do something that took a lot of courage and a lot of independence and was a bit off path prepared you and maybe gave you the strength to make some of these bigger changes later.
I think it absolutely did. Absolutely. It was a great stepping stone into what was going to come, what was lying ahead for my life, without a doubt. Definitely, because I learned about courage for sure, and trusting myself also, really, really being able to trust that voice inside. And we all have it, you have it. Anybody listening right now, you have that voice inside that's telling you, yes, no, it's your intuition. So your guiding light. So I definitely heard the calling and I went after it. And definitely I figured out, like you were saying, like when you encounter situations that blow your mind and you don't know how to deal with them, you definitely, when you deal with them, and this is a big part of life and being an entrepreneur, you do have a little bit more self-confidence and understanding.
Yeah, I'm sure there's moments later on when you're like, well, I did that and I figured it out. So I can probably figure this other thing out too. Yeah. It primed you a little bit to take some risks and realize it can turn out pretty well. So, okay. Yeah. I wanted to rewind because I had a feeling that was like the setup for some of what happened.
I love that, Kristen. Yeah.
Okay. So I also read that, and I listened to one of your podcast episodes where you went into this, and I want to hear this story again. You dropped out of law school after, I think it was 4 days? Did I get
it? That's right.
Please tell us that story as well.
Yeah. So I think unconventional has been definitely my path. And also following really that inner voice, I suppose, that says yes or no, this is for me, this isn't for me. Choosing law school was something I did my undergraduate in cultural anthropology, which was actually something that I changed it to, Kristen, once I returned home from Europe, because I was so fascinated by the way that other people live and just having that understanding of that. And so anyways, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. There were things that I was always a multi-passionate person. Writing was something I always loved, which I do now, and communications, which I do now and did after dropping out of law school. But law school was something I was interested in as well. I definitely loved the, Boston Legal or Ally McBeal or John Grisham books. And it was something that I took the LSATs, the law school admissions test, which is not easy. And I applied and I got in, and I just was so excited, and I just kind of went, and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about it, but I felt, while other people were like, I don't know what I'm doing, I just felt pretty cool. Like, hey, I'm going to law school. I knew what I was going to be doing for the next 3 years. Right.
And there's some certainty in that. Like, okay, for 3 years, I'm doing this. And then after this, I'm doing that. And you can stop the mental wheels in your head spinning. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, you have an answer. Just like,
absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Relief in that.
There totally is. There totally is. And because I think we like to, be in control and just have that sense of security. And so I basically packed up and moved 3,000 miles from California to Boston, Massachusetts. And I loved Boston. I had loved Boston before I moved there. It was just a city that had my heart from the moment first time I ever visited. And I was excited, and my parents came out with me and they helped me, get this little apartment in the back bay, and they helped me like scrub and clean and just make this new place my home. And I immediately met people at orientation, and I felt like I had this little new network of friends. And yeah, I think it was day 3. I dropped out day 4, but I think it was day 3. I found myself staring out the window, just feeling like this can't be the rest of my life. Like this can't even be the next 3 years. And I knew I had this feeling inside that I would be happier selling pretzels at a stand that I passed in the Boston Commons on my way to class than sitting through another torts class. Like it just was so clear to me, even though I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was so clear that law school was not the right fit for me.
I can only imagine what was going through your head on day 3. Like you said, you've just moved across the country. You've just taken a jump through so many hoops to even be in there in that seat in the first place. got a new apartment. I mean, this is your new life. And on day 3, you're like, my new life doesn't fit me.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
What were you thinking then? Like what was I'm sure there was some panic, probably some probably a whole bunch of emotions, but what was going through your head?
Yeah. So in that moment, I just knew that this wasn't for me. This just wasn't the right fit. And there was this guy sitting next to me, and we'll just go ahead and call him Josh for the sake of privacy. We'll call him Josh Smith because why not? So I had never spoken to Josh Smith before, and I've never spoken to him to this day, Kristen, and I will never forget him for the rest of my life. And class wrapped, and the professor, said something for us to consider for our next class. And I just was staring out the window thinking, what have I done? What have I done? And he asked me, he said, oh, so what do you think about, whatever the professor had just proposed? And I said, I don't really care. And he was like taken aback. I was taken aback. I'm not usually that blunt. And then he said, and I said, I don't think I should be here. And he said, me neither. And he gasped.
Oh my gosh.
Closed his mouth, looked around, did anyone hear us? And then he was like, do you want to grab some coffee? And I was like, oh yeah. So we got some, Starbucks frappa something, and took some seats on the steps of Government Center in the heart of Boston. And we just kind of started swapping stories. And ultimately, how did we get here? And Josh, his story was so different than mine in the sense that he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a writer. And he started telling me about all these ideas he had for novels. And he was so excited. It's like, when you're talking to somebody and they're just the whole energy, their body lifts, their face, their eyes light up. You can just tell it's passion, something that people really care about. And that's how he was. He was just so different. And then obviously I asked, well, then why? What, if you know exactly what you want to do, what are you doing here? And he told me how, just his family, his friends, people around him just said, being a writer wasn't realistic. And, you need to make money, and being a lawyer was something that he could do. But he just kept saying, well, but I'll write, on summer. And then he realized, on summer break, and then he realized that he would, probably have to take an internship. And then he was like, but I'll write the next summer. And then he realized he would probably be still interning and maybe studying for the bar. And then he was like, I'll write after graduation. And then he realized at some point he would hopefully, be married and have kids. And as we sat there on the steps of Government Center, it's like I watched this guy with a dream that he really was so excited about. And it was as if his dream was being put on the shelf for, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10, 40, maybe forever. And while I had no idea what I wanted to do at that point, I just knew in my heart that I couldn't spend one more moment doing something that wasn't a good fit for me. And so the next day I dropped out of law school. But it wasn't an easy decision, as most decisions, even when there is this unwavering voice or knowingness inside that says this is or isn't for me, big decisions, as as anyone listening right here probably knows, big decisions are rarely that simple. I worried about I didn't want to disappoint anyone. I asked my parents, I said, how would you feel, if I dropped out and you run into somebody at the grocery store and they're like, oh, how's Emily doing in law school? Or, would they feel like they had to explain? Would they feel ashamed? Would they worry, what I would do about my future? I worried. I didn't want to disappoint my friends. Even my ego was so strong at that point in my life. I think I really did care a lot about what people thought about me. And my ego, I imagine these completely, imaginary, I guess. I imagine these conversations of people who don't even know me or people I don't even really care for, truthfully, but they would, I'd imagine these conversations and be like, oh, did you hear Emily Florence dropped out of law school? Like, she probably couldn't hack it. Stuff that's so ridiculous.
So don't we all do that?
Talk about ego, total ego. And it just blew my mind, Kristen, because in that moment of contemplating dropping out, something that I knew in my heart was the right decision, to actually put so much weight on what other people thought about me or what they would possibly think or how it would impact them. That was the moment in my life where I truly realized that I wake up with me. I spend the day with me. I go to bed with me, and I will be with me, throughout my entire life. And that's when I really realized that, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what people think or say about me. What matters is how I feel, all of us. And that's really the moment that I decided to prioritize my happiness and live my life for me.
Oh, that is such a good story. I mean, my heart is breaking for Josh Smith. I really hope he's written a novel between now and then. And I'll look out for Josh Smith. I know that's not his real name.
I know.
In the bookstore, because I hate hearing people's dreams just die like that. It's like you feel the dream living within that person, but it just slowly fades year after year. So I know while it took a ton of courage, again, another big step in your life that took so much courage to decide I'm going to quit after 4 days. Like I don't even know what I'm doing. But I imagine that conversation stuck with you for so long because it was mirroring what was happening internally for you, where you're like, there's this whole other life that I could live. I don't even know what it is. At least he has an idea. I don't even know what it is yet. But that life could wither and die if I stay here. And I can't let that happen. I have to explore what else could make me feel a lot more like me. But man, not only are you probably battling what everyone else might be thinking, and are people going to be disappointed or confused or whatever by your decision, but I imagine there was probably a lot of angst within you too of what am I going to do now? It's not Josh, where you're like, well, I know what I want to do. I'm just really scared of doing it. You didn't even know what that was yet.
100%. That was like, what the heck am I going to do with my life now? I had it all figured out. I'm going to law school.
Right.
That would buy me 3 years of just doing something, and then I'll be a lawyer, Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
All right. I'm imagining there's probably a lot of people listening right now who are like breaking out into a cold sweat. Like, oh my gosh, she just quit law school and doesn't know what she's going to do instead. And like, what, just kind of freaked out on your behalf. So I know where you landed was then you went to study, I don't know how long was in between, but you went to study broadcast journalism and then worked in PR. So how did that happen? How did you land there?
Yeah. So ultimately, I did drop out, and I was just happy to get, my commission back and sell back most of my books because it was still the first week. So very happy about that. Now here I was still living in Boston. Now I have no idea what to do with my life. And I, live, 3,000 miles away, and I have, rent and everything. So I ended up not selling pretzels at the stand that I passed on my way in the Boston Commons on my way to school. But I did end up getting just a job at an Italian ceramic gallery on Newberry Street in the heart of the Back Bay. And I just worked, and I just, just part-time and just kind of got in touch with myself. I got lost. I got found. I ultimately ended up moving back to California for a little while, moving in with my parents, which is nothing, most of us have gone through it, but it's not something.
Raising my hand, been there. Yep.
Yeah, totally. And thank goodness for amazing parents. But definitely I had to figure myself out. And the night before I left Boston, I told my new friends, I said, I will be back. Like, I just knew it. I love the city. And so a year later, I did return to do my master's in broadcast journalism from Emerson College. And I loved every single minute of it. It was the total right fit for me. And to get there, kind of like what happened when I went back to California, I took a lot of time to myself, and I started really talking to people a lot more than I had before. And I had always been interested in PR and communications, always. And it was definitely, I wouldn't say it was like something that called me, but it was something that I was always passionate about. So I started really talking to people a little bit more, learning a little bit more about what it was like. And then ultimately I went and I did it, and I absolutely loved it. I cannot even tell you how different it was to do broadcast journalism than even a few days in law school.
Okay, I think it's really fascinating that one of the clarifying tools, well, it sounds like there was a very internal process that you went through of checking in with, what do I really want? I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but clearly that was not on track. So taking the time to go inward and get very honest with yourself about what you truly wanted. And then there was a little bit more of an external process of talking to people and hearing stories and getting a real sense of what this other world in communications would be like. So I imagine that was quite a different process than what led you to law school, because you had such a different result the second time around.
Absolutely. Definitely. And I also think, as much as you can talk to people, get like the real nitty gritty, get the real story, not just the, sexy on TV kind of thing.
Polished story.
Right. Like hear about the hardships, the downfalls, like all that stuff. And then also, if possible, anytime people can like really intern or something like that, I think it's so helpful.
Totally. I'm going to link to my episode I did a while back about why you should do informational interviews, because this is such a good advertisement for informational interviews. Because
definitely
you're not doing real interviews. You're just talking to people. You're getting the real story. They don't have to lie to you because, and you're not trying to put on a front, and they're not trying to put on a front, and you can get the behind the scenes kind of facts. So absolutely. I think I love to hear that was so instrumental in clarifying what you wanted this time around.
Yeah.
So I plug for anyone to go seriously start doing this. I know it's really uncomfortable to reach out to random people, but it's also incredibly clarifying.
And people love to share their story.
They do.
They really do. Yeah. People really are good people. People really want to help other people.
Absolutely. And also they just like talking about themselves. Most people, they're not that curious about other people. So if you get curious, they're going to be like, please, I'll tell you my story.
Totally.
Okay. So I know you now run your own business.
Yes.
So this feels like yet another pivot from working in PR. Maybe not a total pivot, but there's, there was another big decision to go out on your own. So how did you end up deciding to go the entrepreneurial route?
Right. Okay. So my life has been definitely a process of choosing again. Right. And I think everybody, I always tell people, please don't ever be afraid to choose over or to choose again, because people change, the landscape of jobs change, and you just follow your heart. Right. So after I did my master's in broadcast journalism, which I absolutely loved, I ended up going into publicity. I worked in entertainment publicity in Beverly Hills, and we represented incredible TV shows like American Idol and So You Think You Can Dance and Gilmore Girls. And it was just a phenomenal company that I was at. And I absolutely loved my coworkers. I loved the clients that I worked with. Some of the people I met are still closest friends to this day. It was just a phenomenal experience. But I will say for myself, once the glamour kind of wore off, because it was pretty exciting in the beginning, definitely, if you will, and I'm kind of doing air quotes, you guys, a little like a sexy job, because, there's red carpets and swag bags and celebrities and you get inside scoop before other people and all this stuff. And the journalism background, it was a great fit for me. It was I just loved, I really felt like I was good at it, if you will. Mm-hmm. It came easy to me and I enjoyed it. But after a while, after things, really settled in and I realized this was, a job or a career, I guess I should say, I had too many days where I felt like I wasn't really doing something that made a difference in the world. I remember this very stressful day, which I cannot repeat who the celebrity was, but let's just say we had her booked on a certain show, like a news show, and everything was lined up and she didn't show up. And it was just a lot of chaos, stuff that I didn't really feel like at the end of the day, I just didn't feel fulfilled. I should put it that way. And another thing I realized is that anytime you're in a career, it's really good to look at the lives of people, not necessarily where you are at, but people above you, to say, if I keep going here, do I want their life, their position in 5 years, in 10 years? You're right. And if you look up and go, yeah, not so much, then, you might want to start opening your eyes and heart to something else. So at the end of the day, while I was good at PR, while I loved so many aspects of it, publicity, entertainment publicity, I loved my friends, all these things, my coworkers, I didn't feel fulfilled. And I remember I wanted to quit. Like I really wanted to. And I had this idea for Savvy Miss, for combining kind of my PR, my journalism, my anthropology. I had this idea of creating this online community for women, something that wasn't going to be like a cosmopolitan magazine, but something that was going to be a little bit more real and about self-love and empowerment and inspiration. Like I had it, Kristen. I even bought the domain name. I had it.
You bought it while you were working at the old job?
I did.
Oh, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a super good sign. And I would try to kind of brainstorm and whatever on the weekends and stuff. It was brewing. I had it. But, to take that big leap is a whole other story. So I definitely had it brewing. I even wrote my letter of resignation. And then I just sat on it for a few months. And then unfortunately there was a family friend passed away and he was very young. I think he was 39 or 40. And I just was like, whoa, life is so fragile. And oh my gosh, like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing? It really was a moment in my life where it was a job, people say there's jobs, then there's career, and then you have passion or purpose. And I felt that I wasn't fulfilled at the end of the day. And I felt that I could have a better role in the world. I felt like I could do more to help other people and also serve myself as well. So when the time was right, when I couldn't wait any longer, I turned in my resignation.
Wow. I mean, clearly a lot went into that. So part of it was recognizing that while I like what I'm doing, if I project out into the long term and I see where I would end up, which again, usually pretty easy to tell. You just look at people higher up in you in the company, right? You're like, well, This is where, if I stay on this trajectory without making a lot of changes, I'm going to end up in one of their positions. And if that frightens you or it doesn't sound super appealing to you, then yeah, you've definitely got some questions to ask. And so it sounds like you were looking ahead and realizing, I don't really want to go where this thing is going. And then you were also able to zoom out often enough, which I think is a hard thing for most people to do because we just get caught up in the day-to-day and who needs to hear from me today and what do I need to check off my to-do list today. But if you can have a few moments where you zoom out from your current experience and say, what is the point of all of this? what is the impact I'm really making? And you weren't loving the answers. You weren't feeling like this is the most fulfilling use of my time. And I'm not seeing the greater impact that makes me feel purposeful. So with both of those things in mind, something's got to change.
Totally. I love how you say also about zooming out. That was spot on.
And so you had this seedling of an idea.
Yeah.
That was growing. And what I think is encouraging, and I hope people will take note of this, is the idea was growing while you were still in the job. You bought the domain, you were playing with these ideas. I mean, you did do this earlier at law school. You just quit and we're like, I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
But this time you're like, okay, I'm not going to quit without any idea.
Yeah.
I am going to start to grow something small on the side before I jump in fully. And I do think it's really powerful when you have those catalysts in your life where it just throws your priorities into very stark contrast. So I'm so sorry to hear about your family member who passed, because it just reminds you, like, really, what is the point? None of us are going to be here forever.
Yeah.
So if I need to make a change, I could sit on it for another year or two or however long, or I can decide I'm ready to jump now. So it sounds like that was part of the timing, was just that reality check.
I think for so many people, and Kristen, I'm sure that you guys find it with so many people that you work with, people are often ready, or they're getting ready to be ready, like far before they actually take the leap. And that's definitely was the case for me, without a doubt. And that's okay. And that's great too, especially if you have a mortgage or children, or, you have to have some income coming in, for sure, without a doubt. It's a great way to, do that kind of, like you were saying, like we were talking about the informational interviews. They get to know what things are going to be about. In my situation, it was also getting clarity around, a business plan or some sort of, what is this? How are we going to, to start a new business, to make that leap to entrepreneur? Okay, well, who are we going to serve? What are we going to do? How are we going to monetize? Yeah.
And a lot of that you can do beforehand, but then at some point, I do know a lot of people who are probably feeling a little called out right now, because they're like, they've been getting ready to get ready for like ever.
Yeah.
And at some point you do just have to say, okay, now's the time. So I guess I'm curious, again, I know that part of it was just the catalyst of losing someone close to you, and recognizing life is short, life is precious, and it's time for me to do what I want to do. I wonder what other factors went into you knowing when you'd spent long enough getting ready to get ready, and now it was time to jump off the cliff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, so there was definitely, I knew for a while, like at the end of the day, I just was not feeling fulfilled. I was more feeling like I wanted to have like a glass of wine, right? And there's a big difference between like wanting to have and feeling like I have to decompress, right? Everyone was like that. And then there was looking, like you were saying, like the zooming out too, and looking at, okay, I don't, even if I keep busting my butt, like I don't really see myself being happy. At this point, after dropping out of law school, I really decided to prioritize my happiness, my joy. Like that was something that I kind of made that vow to myself. Like I am going to, pursue happiness, if you will, or just not even pursue it, do what makes me happy. So that was already, I knew I would be lying to myself if I stayed in a job that didn't bring me real joy. And don't get me wrong, Kristen, and anybody listening, like I don't love every single thing that I do in every day, but every day I love what I do. That makes sense.
I get that. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Becoming an entrepreneur, even if it's something you really want to do or following your passion in any way, shape, or form, maybe it's to write a book, maybe it's, I have no idea, but you may be more like me where you don't love every single thing that you have to do that comes along with it. But to every single day, wake up and love what you do is an amazing honor and gift. And I recommend it for, I encourage anybody to go for that. But so to other factors that really contributed, it was this lack of fulfillment. Didn't see that, fast forward 5 years from now, I really wanted to be, or 10, I wanted to be in those positions. And then this deeper calling, this savviness was in me. I don't know where it came from, but it started brewing and it started growing. And it made me excited. It's kind of like, Josh Smith from knowing he wanted to be a writer. Like when his face lit up, when I would think about it, I would get excited. And I knew that I was onto something, that something was calling me in that direction when I wanted to work on it on the weekends or at night or talk to people about it. And that it made me feel like alive. And I really feel that I was being kind of like steered in that direction, if you will. So that was kind of the biggest things. But then again, going back to like dropping out of law school, there's still ego and there's still fear. People are like, it was very Devil Wears Prada. Like, doesn't everybody want this job? Like, you have a job that everybody wants.
Yeah.
Every girl envies this job kind of thing. And that was a lot of ego to let go of that again. So I kind of faced that again. And again, chose joy and passion and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Again, easier said than done, right? Easy to say in retrospect, but in the moment, for anyone who's feeling like, because I know that leap of I am so ready to quit this thing and go do something else. And even when it's time, even when it's past time, the fear is huge. So no judgment if you're feeling cautious and kind of procrastinating, right? Hesitating to take that leap, because it's a big one. But I'm hoping that your story has been encouraging, because every time you kept taking these leaps, big old leaps of faith, they ended up leading you to the right next thing. Have you ever heard the story, Kristen, of the man who prayed to God to win the lottery?
Maybe. Okay. So every day this man prayed, like, God, please, please let me win the lottery. Please, please. And again, God, please, please today, please let me win the lottery. And finally, he did this like day after day, month after month. He said, God, please let me win the lottery. Please, please let me win the lottery. God said, my son, will you please go buy a ticket? And I feel like, Richard Branson, who's an entrepreneur and author who I totally admire. It's in his book, Like a Virgin. He said, the brave may not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. Ooh. And I think that it's so good, right? I love Richard Branson. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious does not live at all. And I feel that, many of us are afraid of failure. Some of us are also afraid of success. And, as we go through life, we realize that we have to take these leaps. And a lot of people also fail their way to success. It's very common, but you have to keep going. You have to, if you will, you have to take a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I'm loving that your story here is sharing so many examples, like really in a matter of a short span of time, right? Several years, like you took multiple of these leaps of faith. And even when it was scary, even when I'm sure you had moments of doubt and
totally,
like, am I doing the right thing here? It kept leading you to the right next thing, even if you weren't sure where it was going in the middle of it. So I do want to ask, because I think there might be some people listening who are like, okay, I know I want to choose again because I made this choice and maybe it was right. Maybe this career choice, maybe this life choice, it was right for a while, or maybe it was never right, but I'm just here now and I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
And they are feeling a little bit more inspired to make a new choice, but are also feeling some regret for not having made that choice earlier. So I want to hear your take on why having a more winding path, an unconventional path, is actually a great thing and not like, oh, it took me so long to get here and now I'm finally here, but like I wish I could have. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sure the linear path would have been a better path. I think there might have been some value in the winding of the road that you went down. So I'm curious what your thought is on that.
I think this is such an amazing question, Kristen. And for anyone who's feeling like this, I completely get it. I've been there too, right? Because a lot of people say, you know, find what you love and just go do it and just keep doing it. And then eventually you'll get there. Well, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're 20 years past that and you're like, but I have to start over. Mm-hmm. I am such a strong believer that every single thing that we have done on our journeys to get to where we are has led us there. And it's been exactly like the breadcrumbs, if you will, that we've needed. Steve Jobs he had this incredible, in 2005, he gave this really inspiring, amazing commencement speech at Stanford University. And in it, he talked about, you know, the different things that he's done that led him to basically Apple, led him to doing Pixar and all these things that seemed like setbacks. You ended up being these really incredible gifts, if you will. And he ended up saying, though, this great quote, you can't connect the dots looking forwards. You can only connect looking back. And I feel that to be true so much. And everything that I've done, it's led me to where I am today or where I was when I made that big leap, whether it's from a person or something you learned. Sometimes also your idea wouldn't have been able to even come into fruition if it was 10 or 20 years ago. Maybe the technology wasn't there. Maybe the mindset of how, you know, our mentality, like how people have evolved or what's trendy now or the shape of the planet. So I have this deep belief, like, don't look backwards, you know, just look forwards and accept that you are exactly where you are supposed to be right now.
I love that quote about connecting the dots because it's so true. And I have these conversations all the time where the impulse is so strong to try to connect the dots looking forward, to be like, this will lead to this. And then, and if you can't figure it out from where you are now, the instinct is to just not do it, right? You're like, well, I feel like I'd be wasting so much time or I'd be wasting all the education that led me to where I am now if I do something completely different. There's so much fear in letting go of where you've been so far because you don't see how it's going to connect to the next dot. And if you can just trust, you'll look back and it'll all make sense. And whatever you think is going to make sense at this moment is probably not going to be true. If you can just trust that like future you is going to understand, then the dots will connect, I promise. But you do have to have some trust in like the bigger picture, the bigger plan. So I love that. I'm glad you shared that quote because that's really, really helpful here and hopefully a little bit of a balm for people who are nervous to go off course. And having done this many times now, having dropped everything and made a big change and choosing again. I love that phrase. I might name the episode Choose Again because I just love that so much. So having chosen again multiple times, what advice do you have for people who might be on that brink and they're ready to either let something go or they're ready to take something new on, but feeling a little bit stuck or a little bit paralyzed by fear?
Yes, such a great question. First of all, you're not alone. You know, anybody who you look around who's doing something that they love or something that you would like to be doing, they have felt the fear too. And it's just, you know, that phrase that people say, you know, feel fear and do it anyway. And I think that when you do it, you will find that something takes over. It's like Joseph Campbell said, there's this great quote. He said something like, as you go through life, you'll see a great chasm, like jump. It's not as big as you think. I think that once you actually say, you know what, I am doing this, like I am going for it, something takes over and you will find that it is not as hard and it is not as scary. Usually it's the making the decision, the jump, if you will, that is the scariest part. So I would say you're not alone. Feel fear and do it anyways. And I would also say, two things. I would say Audrey Hepburn. So she said, the most important thing is to enjoy your life, to be happy. It's all that matters. And when it comes to career, or like Kristen, like the amazing work that you guys do and everybody that you help, like entrepreneurs and people making leaps and stuff, what makes you happy. Like you're called to something for a reason. And I really believe if there's something inside of you that has been calling you, especially if it's been for a long, long time, it's like you owe it to yourself and to the world to give it a shot. And I love this Chinese proverb that I would encourage you to keep in mind that says, those who say it cannot be done should not interrupt the person doing it.
Ooh, that's good.
Yes. But I would say,
I haven't heard that one.
Really listen to your heart, feel it, believe in yourself, and live your life for you.
Yeah. And you're so right. It's the buildup that's the scariest part usually. Like once you actually make the decision, it's still scary. I mean, don't get me wrong, still scary. But there's some relief in having chosen and deciding now is the time. It's like the waffling in your head that I feel like takes so much energy. It's so draining, and it's the scariest part. I've struggled with like stage fright in the past.
Yes, me too.
Love it, but I've definitely struggled with it way more in the past, and it's always leading up to getting on stage or turning on the camera or whatever. And then once you're there, once you're like 30 seconds in, it's kind of fine, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's what these big decisions often feel like. It's the lead up that's terrifying, and you break out in a cold sweat and you're just like doubting everything. And then once you're doing it, you kind of just do the thing. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about relief too. I think there's such a, like, it's like when you exhale and you're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would encourage anybody to be gentle with yourself, go easy, like you're going to come into obstacles. You're going to figure them out. Like Marie Forleo, her book, Everything's Figure Outable. I love that phrase. It's all good. Like just go easy, be gentle on yourself, be patient, and keep going.
Yeah. And sometimes when you have to figure it out, you realize just how figure outable things are, because you're like, well, I got to figure it out now. I'm like halfway through the air. Better figure out this parachute. You'll figure it out, you have a lot more resources than you think often. That's why I was so eager for you to share your story today, because that's what you've had to learn about yourself. Through every one of these pivots that you've taken, you've had to realize, I have more resources here than I thought, and I can rely on myself to figure it out, even when the next step is very blurry. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and being so open about what it felt like and the fears and how it's all ended up working out in the end, because I think that it's just validating to hear that it can work. It can work just as well. Frankly, I would argue it can work better when you have that winding path, because every piece of it builds onto the next one, even if you don't know how. So thank you so much for sharing today. I know we had you here today in a normal person capacity, but you're also an expert in your own right. And in fact, everyone who's listening, Emily has her own podcast. So please go check out the Everyday Happy Show. I imagine it's all the normal places podcasts can be found. Wherever you're listening here, go listen to the Everyday Happy Show. And I'd love for you to just share where else people can find you online if they want to keep following you.
Yes. Thank you. Well, first of all, Kristen, thank you so much again for having me on the show. I love what you guys are doing so much. I love your podcast. I love just everything you do to help people. I think that the work that you do is so valuable. And I just love you as a person too. We've gone back and forth. We're like, we get along so well. So, but thank you for having me on the show. And thank you everyone for listening. Also, I would love it if you want to join me. I'm on Instagram at Emily S as in Savvy Florence, Florence, like the city in Italy, Emily S as in Savvy Florence. And then, like Kristen said, I have a podcast, The Everyday Happy Show, and then also my company, SavvyMists.com. if you would like to sign up for our Feel Good Friday notes, you can go to savvymiss.com and sign up. And also I'm on emilyflorence.com. You can sign up for my personal newsletter there as well. And so I hope to connect with you all.
Perfect. We'll put all of that in writing in the episode description. So wherever you're listening, just scroll down or go check it out on our site, on our podcast tab of our site, and you'll find all that info. So you can just click right on over and follow Emily wherever you'd like to follow her. So thank you again.
And we hope to have Kristen on our Everyday Happy show too soon.
Yes, exactly. I know you'll have to come find us over there. So much Emily and Kristen content.
Yes.
in the work. So thank you so much, Emily. It's been such a pleasure to get to meet you, really, and get to hear your story and share it with all of our people.
Thank you, Kristen, so much. Thank you guys all very much for your support and for listening and for your time.
All right. Bye for now, Emily.
Bye.
Okay. Join the community or not. If you don't want to be there, I don't really need you to be there. That's fine. I don't want someone there who's just like, I don't know why I'm here.
Out of obligation.
I feel like I should. No.
Or if you just want to support us and you don't want the community, again, just do the $3 tier. That's fine.
Or just keep listening to this podcast every week for free, and that can be all you ever do.
You could leave us a rating and review instead. That's free.
I always appreciate that. Okay, so we'll be back next Friday because we don't do every Tuesday. We don't do every other Tuesday anymore.
Nope, just Fridays from here on out.
We're just a once a week situation. Unless you want occasional bonus content, in which case that's happening on Patreon. We'll be back next Friday with a new side chat.
See you then.